Huh, what's this? Bathroom cleaning. Did you quit law school to become a fancy janitor or something? There I was, in a facility's bathroom, casually cleaning a dirty sink. Just then, an old acquaintance of mine appeared by chance and mocked me with those words. I used to think of you as a rival, but I guess I was way off. Despite years since our last meeting, all he did was sneer at me, holding a rag in my hand. Thinking back, he was always this kind of guy, and I couldn't help but be amazed as I revealed what I was actually doing. His response was unexpected. He could only stand there, wide-eyed, unable to say a thing. My name is Mike. Ever since I was a kid, I've always had a strong sense of justice compared to other kids. I loved playing hero games with my classmates, and I always took on the role of the hero. Justice always wins. Such a childishly idealistic belief was what I aimed to embody. Naturally, my dream was to be a hero. I wanted to be a cool, invincible hero who defeats villains. Until about 4th grade, I insisted a towel blanket was my cape and wore it proudly. I ran around the park with it, climbing high on playground equipment, ignoring my parents' warnings. Looking back now, those are some pretty embarrassing memories. Among my classmates, there was another guy who aspired to be a hero. His name was Steve. I pride myself on my passion for being a hero, but Steve's passion was no less intense. We often argued, insisting each of us was the #1 hero. Our hero games often turned into fierce debates. Then I'll be the main hero. No way, I'm the main hero. Whenever my friends and I gathered to decide the lead role, Steve would always barge in like that. What are you talking about, Steve? You joined in the middle, so I'm the main hero. That's not a rule. I'm the main hero. Me. I'm the main hero. No, it's me. No, I am. No, it's me. It was a relentless back and forth, and we'd get so heated that adults had to intervene every time. Steve and I had a strange bond, first meeting in kindergarten. Even back then, he was always picking on me, and I was frankly sick of it as a kid. I thought I'd see less of him in elementary school. But to my surprise, we ended up in the same class in the 1st grade. And it continued like that in the 2nd and 3rd grades. Turns out, we were destined to be in the same class for all 9 years of mandatory education. We were always aware of each other, each striving not to lose to the other. It was a rivalry, but not in the noblest sense. Our fiercest competition was probably in academics. Hey, Mike, what did you get in math? He'd always come over to me after test was returned. He seemed very confident that day, smiling broadly. What about you, Steve? Me? Look, I got 98. He proudly spread his test paper in front of me, like he was showing off. The teacher said the highest score in the class was 98. Steve was so smug, sure of his victory. But unfortunately, the highest score simply means the top score, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's held by only one person. Huh, I got 98 too. I retorted with a smug look, just to crush his smile. By not making a fuss like him, I secretly took a mental victory over him. Huh, the same score, really? That's boring. Maybe it's a mistake in the teacher's grading. You better be honest and report it if there's a mistake in your scoring. Our gazes clashed as if sparks were flying, glaring at each other intensely. Eventually, we both looked away, determined to win in other subjects next time. Whenever another test was returned, we'd meet again to compare scores. If one won, he'd taunt the other. If he lost, he'd make some excuse. This pattern repeated with every test. Our rivalry even manifested during the school's sports festival. Despite being in the same class and team, we competed fiercely, refusing to lose to each other. We competed in everything, like who passed more people in the relay. Thanks to that, or perhaps not, our team won decisively every year. Our competition wasn't limited to studies and sports. We clashed in student council activities too, In 8th grade, we both ran for student council president. However, we were both soundly beaten by an annoyingly handsome guy who only ran as a joke. That was a bitter pill to swallow for both of us. In that way, we often fought so much that those around us wondered why we couldn't get along. To the question of why, neither of us had an answer. The ritual of competing with Steve, which started from our days vying for the hero's role, had become the norm. It wasn't that we didn't get along, but that's how it must have seemed from the outside. However, deep down, we each acknowledged the other as our greatest rival. We continued our rivalry in high school, competing in everything as expected. We'd probably compete in everything anyway, whether it be studies or the sports festival. We probably would have competed over who got into a more prestigious college. But then, everything changed suddenly. In the fall of my freshman year of high school, my father passed away in a car accident. The suddenness of it plunged our family into deep grief. The photo of my father with a beaming smile, the lavish and large floral arrangements, the sounds of soft sobs. I still vividly remember all of these things. What? The driver is claiming innocence. Yes, that's right. The accident was caused by the driver's reckless driving. He was smoking with one hand and using his phone and steering with the other, even having consumed alcohol. His actions were extremely irresponsible. Yet, despite this, he claimed he was not at fault. Taking advantage of the fact that the victim was no longer in this world, he kept making self-serving statements, never once apologizing to the bereaved family. We were beyond angry, just utterly shocked. But with all this evidence, we should be okay. The dash cam and nearby security camera footage clearly showed my father wasn't at fault and that the driver was to blame. Don't worry, I'll take responsibility and clear your father's name. In this nightmare-like situation, the lawyer, Bob, was incredibly supportive. Bob, a newcomer at a small law firm, fought hard for my father's honor. Thanks to him, my father was publicly vindicated. The driver faced severe punishment. Thank you, Bob. This will finally bring peace to my husband. We're truly grateful for everything. Hearing the good news, our family, in tears, thanked Bob. Even after all this, the offender never apologized. But that's all right now. The most important thing is that we were judged fairly. Besides, I had already managed to recover from my despair. The emotion that triggered this recovery was admiration. Bob, I want to be a legal expert like you. Like me, that's an honor. Do your best, I'll support you. He cleared my father's name and saved our family from despair. To me, Bob was a true hero. Although different in form and approach from the hero I aspired to be as a child, the principle of saving people in trouble with justice remained the same. Since then, I decided to pursue a degree in law. I aimed for a more challenging university, studying hard on my own every day. I should have been fulfilled, yet I felt a slight sense of dissatisfaction. Not understanding the reason behind this feeling, I continued to immerse myself in my studies. Then, one day, when I mentioned my aspiration to study law, Steve was surprised. Really, Mike, you're aiming for that law school too? You too, Steve? Yeah, what, you want to compete with me? It turned out his father was a lawyer. Influenced by him, Steve developed a strong sense of justice and aimed to be a defender of justice, just like me. Despite that, he had a pretty foul mouth. I thought he might be more suited to be a dark hero rather than a regular hero, but I kept that thought to myself. Setting that aside, now that Steve and I had the same goal. Fine, I'll be the top entrant, Mike, you can just wail at my feet. Sorry, but I can't let that happen. My dream is on the line. Thus it began our competition to see who could score higher on the entrance exams. Determined to score even 1 point higher than him, I studied harder than ever. Before I knew it, my sense of dissatisfaction had vanished. Perhaps, deep down, I craved this competition with him. As a result of our hard work, both of us successfully passed the entrance exams. I was overjoyed to have moved a step closer to my dream, but it stung a bit to lose to Steve by a few points. As a law student, I worked hard at my studies. The stimulation from competing with Steve led to a fulfilling college life. However, things took another turn. After my father's death, my mother, who had been working tirelessly, collapsed. It must have been the toll of years of hardship. There was a scholarship to cover tuition, and I could manage living expenses with part-time jobs. If it were just me, there would be no issue, but it wasn't that simple. There were hospital bills for my mother, and I had twin younger brothers. At the time, they were in their second year of middle school, about to face high school entrance exams. They would need money for exam fees and, if they passed, for tuition. I cut back on expenses as much as possible and increased my work hours. To save every penny, my meals became increasingly frugal. I quickly lost weight, worrying my friends. Yet, I continued to throw myself into studying and working. Sometimes, I took night shifts that paid more, even if it meant losing sleep. "Mike, you can't keep this up. Your health won't last. Maybe you should take a break once in a while," professors and friends advised me, but I didn't listen. It was all for my mother, for my brothers. Thinking so, I continued my miserable life, narrowed by my limited perspective. At that time, what I held was a sense of justice for my family. But at the same time, it was also a distorted, reckless spirit of self-sacrifice. With such a lifestyle, my body broke down in just half a year. After finishing a night shift, attending lectures at university all day, and then another night shift, I pushed myself too hard while tired and finally collapsed during work. "You're suffering from overwork. You should rest for a while. It's better to stop doing part-time work for the time being." "What? But my family needs me." "Calm down, Mike. If something happens to you, it's all for nothing, right?" The doctor told me that, and I was left speechless, unable to respond. It was because he was absolutely right. Yes, at this rate, my family and I would all collapse together. Why didn't I realize such a simple thing? I thought about it a lot while receiving eavesdrops in the hospital. The dream I pursued, inspired by my admiration for Bob, and the improvement of the reality that surrounded me now. Realizing both at the same time was impossible for me. Then, I had to prioritize one over the other, meaning I had to give up one of them. Faced with this choice, my heart decided immediately, without any hesitation. I couldn't abandon my family. I decided to drop out of university and start working. This was my decision during the last week of my college life. While I was at the university handling various procedures, I was stopped by Steve. "Mike, is it true you're dropping out?" "What, you knew?" I had told my close friends about dropping out, but I deliberately didn't tell Steve. If he also considered me a good rival, my dropout might demotivate him. That's why I kept it to myself. "Why the heck are you doing this? Giving up halfway like this, because you collapsed? Is that enough for you to give up?" "It's part of the reason." "Well, there are various circumstances." Steve, looking like he might grab my collar any moment, had tears in his eyes. "Lucky you, the nuisance is gone. Now you can study to become a great lawyer without any distractions, right? Don't joke around, don't give up so easily. Was your dream just that much to you?" Steve confronted me with a voice loud enough to echo through the university entrance. However, my decision to drop out was already made, for my family, and for my own health, and I couldn't just say, "I won't quit after all." "I'm sorry." Unable to find the right words to respond, all I could do was apologize to Steve. To him, I no longer had the spirit of competition or the fangs to fight. Understanding this, Steve clicked his tongue and walked away from me. I could only silently watch his back as he left. Until I could earn a decent living, we managed with the money my father left and what I had saved from my excessive part-time work. Though it was tough, my mother's health gradually improved, and my brothers successfully advanced in their education. I resumed part-time work to support our living. Years passed since then. One day, I was in the restroom of a courthouse I visited for an errand. It was pretty clean, but I noticed a bit of dirt on the wash basin. When my mother was in the hospital, I mostly did the housework. I particularly liked cleaning and would get absorbed in it before I knew it. I just couldn't stand leaving any dirt, a habit from that time. Caring about the cleanliness was a habit from that time. I see there's a rag, it might be none of my business, but I just couldn't leave it alone, so I decided to clean up. I took off my suit jacket, rolled up my sleeves, and wiped the dirty area clean. The mirror also caught my attention, so I polished that too. Phew, that's better. Feeling satisfied, I noticed someone had entered. Standing in the middle of the hallway, admiring my cleaning work, I thought I might be in the way and quietly muttered "Excuse me" as I moved aside. As I looked up while exiting the restroom, I made eye contact with the person through the mirror. He stopped in his tracks and looked at me. Can I help you? Is that Mike?" The man, wearing a lawyer's badge on his collar, called out my name. "Mike, it is you, isn't it?" he exclaimed with an unusually loud voice, his eyes wide open. I recognized him immediately. His hair was set with wax, and he was well dressed. But his face was unmistakable. Steve Burton, my rival since kindergarten. "Hey, Steve, long time no see. It's a surprise to meet you here." His tailored suit seemed to scream his competence. I greeted him, acknowledging our reunion. In contrast, Steve sneered upon seeing me with a rag in my hand. "Huh, what's this? Bathroom cleaning? Did you quit law school to become a fancy janitor or something?" "No, it's not like that." I denied Steve's words, but he continued to mock me. He continued to mock me, saying it was something only a lowly person would do. I can believe the guy who was competing for the top spot with me ended up like this. "I thought you were my rival, but it seems I was totally mistaken." Frustrated with Steve's unwillingness to listen, I put away the rag. "You seem to be misunderstanding something." I washed my hands, dried them with a handkerchief, put on the jacket I was holding under my arm, and then looked Steve straight in the eyes. "I'm a judge, actually. Well, an associate judge for now." "What?" Steve finally quieted down, his gaze briefly flickering away. He must have noticed the badge on my jacket. "A judge, what? Why are you?" "What do you mean why? You're the one who said it. Don't give up so easily." "So, I didn't give up. That's all there is to it." With that, Steve's face froze in astonishment. Years after dropping out of college, my twin brothers were high school students, about to start thinking about their future paths. My mother's health had improved enough for her to be discharged, requiring only occasional hospital visits. Still, I continued juggling construction work and convenience store shifts to support us. One day, my mother called me to a nearby cafe. "What? Remarrying?" "Yes, that's right. The person is. Oh, here he comes now." As she said this, she waved towards the cafe entrance. Turning around, I saw a man about my mother's age approaching us. "The person is, wait, sir, Dr. Thompson, right?" My mother's new partner was Dr. John Thompson, her primary physician. "Mike, I'm looking forward to our future together." "Yes, likewise, I'm looking forward to it too." The awkwardness of knowing my mother's remarriage partner only lasted the first few weeks. John was a very kind and caring person. I felt at ease leaving my mother in his hands. My brothers quickly warmed up to John, bonding with him as if they were a real family. Moreover, both of them began expressing a desire to become doctors like John and wished to pursue medical studies. I was worried about the high tuition fees, but John generously offered to pay for everything. Even though they were his stepsons, he was genuinely happy that they wanted to follow in his footsteps. He also offered to take care of our household finances, saying the money I earned for the house should be used for myself. Suddenly freed from my responsibilities, I was unsure of what to do next, but then I came to a decision. There was still something I hadn't accomplished. The path to becoming the hero of justice I had always admired since childhood. The path of law, which I had entered inspired by Bob. I resolved to re-enter the law school and resume my studies. That's the decision I made. My brothers and I enrolled in the same university, they in the medical school and I in the law school. I studied hard again, maintaining the top position in my class. I passed the bar exam on my first try and received high praise during my legal training. This is how I became a judge. But I am still an associate judge. It takes over a decade of experience to become a full judge. I continue to strive, knowing this is not the end goal. The presence of a rival fuels my motivation. Even though I was praised as a top student in the law school, I still felt unfulfilled. The fact that I had fallen behind years ago always lingered in my mind. Someday, I will stand shoulder to shoulder with that man, my classmate and rival, and surpass him. That thought has been my driving force. After hearing my long story, Steve stood there, looking down. So, that's what happened. I wondered if this man was really Steve Williams. He had such an uncharacteristic expression on his face. I'm sorry about back then. I knew your situation, yet I only pushed my ideals on you. You must have been struggling, too. He regretted what he had said to me just before I dropped out of college. His uncharacteristic words caught me off guard, and I nearly burst into tears. Why didn't I support you more? I'm really sorry. I regret it. Steve remained downcast. I said, look up, man, and put my hand on his shoulder. Steve, I'm actually thankful for what you said back then. Don't give up so easily. It was because you said that I decided to try again. After leaving college, I honestly thought about giving up on law. Maybe get a job at some average company and lead a vague, aimless life. After all the struggles I had been through, that should have been enough. That's what I thought. But I couldn't get Steve out of my head. His expression at the university entrance the last time I saw him seemed to be a mix of anger and sadness. If I gave up, would he get angry with me again? And there was another thing. I didn't want to end up a loser. Steve's family owned a law firm. He was an excellent student, and he would undoubtedly become a lawyer. I had lost to him in the university entrance exam scores and in realizing our dreams. Playing the hero, studying, the sports festival. Steve and I, constantly winning and losing against each other, never once allowed ourselves to be outdone. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that ending my lifelong competition with him as a loss would be like losing a part of my life. That thought was unbearably frustrating. It was these two major reasons that allowed me to make a comeback. That's why I'm grateful to you, Steve. Thanks for getting angry at me back then. Mike. When Steve looked up, he met my eyes and gave a sly smile. That's right, you've always been that kind of guy, always competing with me. No matter how much I pushed you away, you'd always claw your way back, always in my way. No, it was you who was always trying to compete with me, wasn't it? I responded with a smile to Steve's words. Fine then, Mike. Let's have another competition. Who will make it first, me taking over my father's firm as a director, or you becoming a judge? I accept your challenge. Just don't cry later, okay? That's my line. We bantered, glaring at each other as sparks flew. After a few seconds of this, we both reached our limit and burst out laughing. Ahaha, oh man, we haven't changed a bit since we were kids. Right, but this is us, isn't it? Always trying to one-up each other. Looking forward to more of this, Steve. Yeah, absolutely. Same here, Mike. Our rivalry, which began when we were preschoolers and continued into our college years. It wasn't going to end just because we had become adults. We will continue to compete and spur each other on. Though unspoken, Steve and I exchanged a firm handshake, conveying this mutual understanding. Some time later, Steve and I started to interact as friends, even drinking together. Finally, as we were approaching our 30s. Wow, you already have a wife and kids. Steve was already married, aiming to be a distinguished director for his family's sake. What about you? Me, I haven't thought that far ahead, still single. As I sighed, Steve proudly started talking about his wife and family. Marriage is great, kids are wonderful, he said with a smile. In this regard, I knew I couldn't compete with him. Instead of feeling envious or jealous, I just listened with a smile, finding it heartwarming. One day, Steve contacted me and invited me to his house. He was throwing a birthday party for his daughter and asked me to come and celebrate with them. I was worried about intruding on a family event, but apparently, my name was well known as Steve's rival, and they were eager to meet me. Hi, it's great to meet you. As I was guided to the living room, I saw his wife and their daughter running around. Welcome, my husband always speaks highly of you. His wife greeted me with a gentle smile. Their daughter, seemingly startled by my sudden appearance, clung to her mother's legs. Not wanting to scare her, I crouched down to her level and asked, "Hello, what's your name?" She blushed and hid behind her mother. Seeing this, Steve burst out laughing. Haha, Mike, looks like she doesn't like you. Why are you so happy about that? When Steve picked her up, she seemed to calm down. Looking straight at me, she said, "My name's Emily." Is that so, Emily? How old are you? I asked, and Emily got down from Steve's arms and ran to the back of the living room. I watched her curiously as she held up her birthday card above her head, saying cheerfully, 3. Though initially scared, Emily gradually warmed up to me. After several hours, she even brought a book over and sat on my lap. "Read this, please." "Okay, sure thing." After I read to her, Emily politely thanked me. It was surprising to see such manners in a 3-year-old. As I patted her head and praised her, she hopped around joyfully. Watching her, I began to think that having kids might be nice. As evening approached, it was time to say goodbye. "Are you leaving already?" "Yeah, goodbye, Emily." No, don't go." It seemed I had become unusually attached to her in just one day. She grabbed my pants, making it hard for me to leave. "Come on, don't trouble him," Steve said as he picked her up. She looked like she might cry any moment. "Emily, I'll come to play again, okay, promise." I extended my pinky finger, and she did the same. As we made a pinky promise to meet again, Emily suddenly kissed me on the cheek. Surprised, I turned to see Steve getting angry. "Hey, Mike, what's that about? Don't come here again. I won't let you see Emily anymore," Steve shouted, his face turning red. Then, as if to defy her father, Emily shouted loudly, "Why would you say that? No, I hate Daddy." "Emmy, what?" There I was, confused about how to react. Emily was crying, Steve was red-faced, and his wife was smiling at the chaos unfolding at the doorway. The goodbye at the entrance turned into such a chaotic scene. As a busy judge, my days are filled with responsibility. This job carries a great deal of responsibility. My job greatly impacts people's lives. But with great responsibility it comes great fulfillment. I'm determined to be a respectable judge. fulfilling the dream I worked hard to achieve. I owe my current perseverance to the people around me. My father, who always worked for us. Bob, who cleared my father's name and introduced me to the world of law. My mother, who continued to support me warmly even after falling ill. John, who encouraged me. And above all, my rival, who urged me never to give up. And now, Emily, who adores me. They are all important people in my life. Reflecting on this, I realize how much my life is supported by these people. For their sake, I will continue to be a dignified judge and strive for excellence. Gazing at the starry sky on my way home from work, I made this vow to myself.